Miss Chance 96 here with another video review. This time I'm going to be reviewing a movie, that being Suicide Squad, of course. So I do movie reviews every now and then. I don't do them too often, mainly because I always feel like when I do a movie review, the next time I see the movie or right after I'm done filming, I'm always just disappointed with it because like I forget to mention something and it just is kind of annoying because there's like, oh, I should have talked about that, or oh, I wish I mentioned that, things like that. So I can never like find a good formula for reviewing a movie where I get my thoughts out completely. However, I have received many requests to do a Suicide Squad movie review, and I definitely want to talk about it in general too. So let's get started with it. So basically I have a little notes here to help me try to get what at least everything that I can remember at the moment out, what I want to get out, basically. First of all, this will be a spoiler-filled review. Just wanting to put that out there. I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to talk about anything that I want, as well as I have seen the movie 4 times now, which, I see every movie. Well, in superhero movies in particular, I see a bunch of times, and I'm at 4 right now for Suicide Squad. I do plan to see it again at least. I've seen it enough times where I do know what I'm talking about, and so let's get started. What I'm going to be talking about, how this is going to be structured, is first of all, I'm going to talk about how I would have started the movie, because the movie does go through some rough points at the very beginning, so this is basically how I would rearrange the beginning of the movie, and then I'm going to talk about the characters individually, probably quickly for most of them, and then I'll talk about the cringeworthy moments, and then the great moments of the movie, and then the ending. So basically you've got how I would have done the beginning, all the characters, the moments I didn't like, the moments I liked, and then the ending. Overall, just to give you my general thoughts just right off the gate so you kind of know where I'm coming from, I enjoyed the movie. I definitely see that it has problems, particularly with the story and the character development, because most of these characters are completely sidelined, and the ones that do get some motivations put to them, as well as some backstories and some well executed backstories, basically, they don't get too much of it because they obviously have to introduce a ton of characters at once. This movie definitely does suffer in the beginning because it feels very disjointed. It kind of goes through these motions of trying to give you these little scenes that you can tell weren't filmed to be put together like this, but just that's how it ended up. Obviously, this movie went through extensive reshoots, as well as they hired multiple different people to cut together different versions of this film, which then they showed to preview audiences, and then to see which one worked out the best. And the one that actually ended up winning as far as being the chosen final product was the guy who cut together the first trailer. They allowed him to cut together the movie, and that's the one that ended up winning. So you can definitely see that there's it goes through a rough patch at the beginning. How I would have done it, I would have started the movie with showing the individual characters not in prison, like out on the streets, without an Amanda Waller, without her voiceover. Would have just showed them on the streets and went by character. So I would have showed Deadshot's story with him killing that guy, and then seeing his daughter, and then being caught with Batman. And then I would go to Harley Quinn and I'd show her with the Joker in Arkham Asylum. I would definitely extend that scene. I think it's way too cut down. And I would even say that the scene where she's at the club, although I love watching her dance, I must say, I don't think that that scene is particularly necessary. It does show how the Joker really does love her, which is an interesting dynamic, which I'll be talking about when I talk about their characters. However, I don't know if that scene is 100% critical, and I would have preferred more of their backstory as far as how she became Harley and how they kind of fell in love, rather than that scene. So I would have extended that Arkham scene. I would have also put the scene where she jumps in the chemicals. I would have put that in the beginning as well, and I would have definitely tried to explain to the audience what that scene was. I can imagine anybody who doesn't already know that from the comics is going to be so confused. So, but me personally, I did know what was happening at least, so it worked out for me. Then I'd go through Boomerang, and then so basically I'd start with Deadshot and Harley, and I would show a little bit of their backstory, and then I'd end it on them being captured, and then I would do it for the other characters. However, I would just show them being captured, like Captain Boomerang, the way that they did him. So I'd show Captain Boomerang, Killer Croc, and I'd even throw in some really quick scenes for Slipknot. I think that even him just being captured, I think is worth it, so that when he finally shows up, it's not a big surprise. And then I would move on to Amanda Waller actually visiting the prison with them all in it, and there, when she's visiting the prison, she'll test Deadshot, the way that he shoots and things like that. And then I would move it to her pitch at the Pentagon, and I would completely skip her little talk at the restaurant, because it becomes redundant once she gives a pitch at the Pentagon. So I think that that's how the movie should have started, and then it would have moved on them, starting the team like it did in the movie. So now on to the actual characters. I'm going to start out with the cameos from the superheroes, Batman and Flash. Very cool. It was great seeing them in this movie, and it was great seeing them kind of like how they are in the comics, when they're just kind of rounding up the criminals on the street. Since we see them basically in their own solo movies, that movie usually just focuses on one villain, and they're the big villain for the entire film. At the very end, they catch them. So it was kind of neat to see them just kind of being able to capture a supervillain without having an entire movie around it. It felt really cool and felt like a real world thing, so I definitely did like their appearances in the movie. Then we go to Joker. Jared Leto's Joker, a lot of his scenes were cut, so it is hard to completely judge his performance since he didn't have a ton to do. I was expecting him not to be in this movie much, though. I see a lot of people complaining that he wasn't in the movie much. However, all the reports up until then said that he was not in the movie much, so it was something that I was expecting. So I'm a little surprised that a lot of people are surprised by the fact that he's not in it much. Overall, I think that his performance is interesting. If done in the right scenario, in the right context of what he's doing, if he has a good story around what he's doing, I think that he can be a good Joker. However, I didn't particularly love him. I mean, he was okay. He had potential, but there was nothing about him that I was just like, oh, that's a great Joker, It was an interesting interpretation that, if it is fleshed out more with a complex and interesting story of his own, then it could be really cool. And then we have Harley. I loved Harley Quinn. I don't read many comics. However, I have read about the first 10 issues of the Harley Quinn solo comic, and so I really do kind of know how she talks and everything, and her personality in the comics, especially in the modern comics, and I think that Margot Robbie really nailed her performance with her. Obviously, she brings the good looks herself, but the way that she acted was really perfect for Harley Quinn. Her voice and what she said was really just absolutely dead on Harley Quinn. The dynamic between the two of them is very interesting, obviously, in the comics and everything. That they have more of an abusive relationship. Harley loves Joker, but Joker is more of a he kind of enjoys her being around, and he sees the benefits of having, another associate, basically, but he'll throw it to the sharks if he can. So that is a aspect that was going to be visited in this movie, and they decided not to, which I think is not a bad idea, because this movie is so crowded and has so many things going on. I think it would confuse people had they showed that scene where he hits her and things like that. So I kind of liked the idea of just making the relationship more simple, with the fact that they're both just in love. I think that that's a better way to go for this movie. However, in a solo Batman movie or something like that, I think it can be explored upon with more depth as to the complexity of the relationship. But for this movie, I think it worked just having a very simple, they love each other, I think that was a better way to go, because this movie was so packed already. Deadshot, I thought that Will Smith was great. I thought that he would play himself, basically normal. He'd be, Will Smith. And Will Smith is a great actor, and his character is great, but I didn't think it would be anything particularly unique. It turned out to be pretty unique, and I definitely like the fact that he had a nice dynamic with his daughter, and I like the fact that he felt like a villain. He didn't feel like the character that, because he has a daughter, oh, he's a good guy. No, he really did feel like a villain that has one person in his life that he does love. So I did like that a lot about him, and I just thought Deadshot was really cool in general. Captain Boomerang doesn't have much of a story, but I'm fine with it. I think that he is a very static character. He doesn't need a backstory. He can just be that guy that's kind of funny, a little quirky, and just is motivated by money. I think that that's an easy easy character type to depict in a movie, and he doesn't need a backstory, so I wasn't bothered by the fact that they really didn't flesh him out at all. Then we have Killer Croc. Killer Croc was the monster on the team. He was quite worthless in the movie for the most part. However, I like the fact that there is a monster on the team. I like King Shark a lot. I would actually hope for King Shark to be in the sequel, but I don't want both of them to be in the sequel, so I'd hope that Killer Croc would die, and then they'd bring in King Shark. But he worked out nicely as the monster of the team, basically. He adds a little bit more visual flair to the team, and you get a monster on the team. But his character himself really didn't do anything, special. I wasn't too impressed with him. However, I like the fact that he was on the team because it added that monstrous aspect. Then we have Slipknot. Slipknot was completely worthless, but they did need to definitely demonstrate that the fact that the bombs in their heads were real and that these people were willing to use them. So I think that Slipknot was used perfectly in the movie. I would have not added any extra screen time than he already had, other than a quick shot of him, just maybe 10 seconds of him being captured. In like that montage at the beginning. So Slipknot, he was fine for what he was meant to be. Then we have Rick Flag. Rick Flag was a decent character. He is definitely needed in the story because obviously if you just sent these guys on a mission of their own, they wouldn't do it, it would not turn out well. So you do need somebody who's down there on the floor with them, that's leading them to do what they don't want to do, basically. I don't think he's necessary for a sequel, however, I thought that he was necessary for this story. Then we have Enchantress. Enchantress, I see a lot of people being surprised that she was the main villain as well. Since the covers from Empire Magazine came out that had Deadshot, Harley, Joker, and Enchantress on it, it was pretty clear that there was a good chance that she was going to be the villain. And then as more information came out from the months and months and months after that, it just further confirmed that she was the villain. So I was expecting her to be the villain. I was not surprised by this. She had very limited villain motivations. I thought that she was very cliche villain. However, I liked her. There was nothing wrong with her. I'm okay with a cliche villain, especially in an origin story where you're trying to set up these other characters, because you don't have time to explore the villain as much because you're setting up your main characters, the team. So I was okay with her. She did what she needed to do, and she was fine in the movie. Nothing fantastic, however, I'm fine with what they did with her. I don't have a problem with it. Amanda Waller was excellent. She acted exactly like she is in the comics. Very ruthless. Viola Davis did a great job as her. Then we get to the category of characters called deadweight. These are the characters I think should have been completely taken out of the film. They had no place being in the film, and it would have just given more time to explore particularly Deadshot and Harley Quinn a bit more. But this is Incubus, who's Enchantress's brother. I don't see a need for him at all. I think that I think the visual effects are actually really good in this movie, except with Incubus, some scenes he definitely just looks like a CGI guy, and I don't like that at all. So from a visual standpoint, I don't like him being in this film, as well as he just does nothing of any use. I think that anything that he does, they could have given Enchantress to do. The only thing that he is necessary for is kind of like that secondary boss fight, before you get to the end of the movie where El Diablo can really show his strength. But I think that they could have easily done that with like a big one of with Enchantress's, her little minions, whatever they are. You could have had like a big minion or something that she created, and then had El Diablo do what he did, or just have the army come after them and El Diablo sacrifices himself to kill the army, and then the other guys go for Enchantress. So I find him completely, I don't like the look of him. I think that he cheapens the movie, and he has no point in the movie. Then we have Katana. Man, Katana is worthless in this film. She has barely any screen time at all, and I can imagine for any non-comic book fan, they were completely confused as to who she is. She's given no backstory like whatsoever, other than Rick Flag saying something about her backstory. However, that happens like at the end of the movie, so it's like by then, if you're not invested with the character, that's not going to get you invested with her. She was absolutely pointless. She also just said one thing in English. She said, "I'm not a thief." So she doesn't even have interaction with the other members of the team. I find her completely worthless, and think to yourself, if she was not in the movie, would it have changed the movie at all? And that is a big no. I would have completely loved her not to be in this film at all. Then so now I've gone through all the characters. Now I'm going to talk about my cringeworthy moments, the moments I really don't like in the movie, whether they're small or big, and then I'll talk about the great moments, the moments I really did like in the movie. So just kind of no particular order here, but and this is starting off with a small one, but in the flashback scene where Joker is in Arkham and he's being interviewed by Harleen, there was Joker said that he wants a favor, and she says anything. I mean, what? It was a really poor written line because it's so obvious, and I don't think it was particularly well executed by Margot Robbie. That's a scene that whenever it's going to come up, I'm always like bracing myself for this just awful line. So it's just something that really annoys me. It's a small thing, but it's very annoying. And in that same type of montage, where we have Rick Flag and Enchantress relationship, it cuts from him finding her in a disgusting black water bath with like grass coming out of it in this house where there's lots of dead people with things written on their faces and everything. And the very next scene is the two of them in a hotel room, and the only line in it is Enchantress going, "Are you going to kiss me or not?" And it felt so just poor, it was just not done very well. I would have liked to see I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on how their relationship blossomed. However, it would have been much better to start maybe just a few seconds earlier and have a bit of dialogue between the two of them before it got to that point. That like this was just like a highlight reel. Like it felt very much like I missed last week's episode, and here's the first 10 seconds of this week's episode that goes and shows you clips from the last week's episode, so you understood what happened last week. That's what it felt like to me. It was just really awful and really not well thought out, and it was just such an annoying scene. Then we have, what else we have? Let me look at my list here. The spring break comment in the Harley Quinn when they're at the very beginning when the guard is interviewing, or not interviewing, but talking to her, and then she gets electrocuted. It goes into this sequence. I assume it's what she's remembering from being shocked, but it goes with her kind of like sitting on the floor and them saying, like that she's just a, little girl, how come you can't beat her? And, she's being injected. And then he ends the comment taking a picture with her saying spring break. It was such a poor scene. I really didn't like it. It added absolutely nothing to the story. It was shot very strangely. Obviously, I imagine they did that to kind of show, it's meant to show Harley Quinn's insanity. However, it just doesn't work. It kind of comes out of nowhere and it serves no point, and it is just a cringeworthy scene. I definitely don't like it as much as it is nice to see Harley Quinn without any shirt on or anything like that. It definitely isn't necessary for the scene, and I really would have liked that to not be in the movie. Then the last thing that is a cringeworthy moment for me is El Diablo. You know what? I completely forgot to talk about El Diablo. I guess I was thinking that I was going to talk about him both in the cringeworthy and great moments, that I forgot to talk about that character. But anyway, El Diablo starts out in the movie with not much of a backstory, just wanting, obviously having done bad things and wanting to be peaceful. I really enjoyed how they opened up his backstory a lot more, and I just liked the character a lot. I was especially happy with how he redeemed himself at the end. But the one cringeworthy moment I have about him is that in his little fantasy that the Enchantress gives him about what he wants the most, it starts out really perfect with him on the couch, just watching TV, very simple, but having his kids asleep next to him, they're still alive. I thought that was excellent. But then the scene gets bad, as far as his wife then comes in and brings him a beer and then sits down and says, I'm going to put the kids to sleep and then maybe we can kick it. It was just, I really hated that. It made it seem more like he missed the fact that, he didn't have his wife to bring him beers and have sex with him, rather than just having her be alive. I would have much preferred the scene. I think it would have been much more simple and just a sweeter, more kind scene had it been exactly the same, but she was just also asleep on the couch, maybe resting her head on his shoulder or something. I think that would have been really nice, and it would have been just a lot in better taste. I think that it just would have improved the scene a ton more. But now let's move on to the great moments. So here's the moments that I really did enjoy, particularly Deadshot, his scene where he's killing all of the mindless little monsters there. I thought that scene was kind of cool. To see them all fight these expendable monsters was fun. But then the way it ends is great, with Deadshot getting on a car and just wiping everybody out. And he uses a bunch of different guns. Like, he's not just using the same gun. It was shot really nicely with the fact that he pulled out multiple different weapons. and it was very cool. You really got to see Deadshot's power in that scene and see everybody react to his power. It was very neat, and it really did cement the fact that he deserves to be on this team, even though like El Diablo is really the only one that's powerful enough to deserve a place on this team. So I really did like that scene a lot. I thought it was very cool. I enjoyed every time I watch it. Then we have the bar scene. Everybody's saying that this is a scene that they enjoy. This is a scene I enjoy as well. I think it's quite nice. It's a good character moment, and it makes the movie take a breath, which is nice as well. And then of course, like I said previously, I love El Diablo's backstory. So this is obviously where he get his backstory, which is really nice. Then we have Harley being saved on the roof where the Joker comes to get her. Thought that was a really cool scene, very cool. This is the type of moment that I'm really happy that they simplified their relationship, because it really felt like he's coming to get her because he loves her, and she loves him and she wants to go to him. Really did like that scene. I thought it was very cool. So I enjoyed that scene in general. Then I love the fact that these actually felt like villains. I was worried that this movie would seem more like, the taglines was, worst heroes ever and things like that. And I expected them to just to keep calling themselves bad guys, but for them to actually be good guys. However, it didn't really seem like that. They actually wanted to escape, and there's many comments from Deadshot like "Stay evil, dollface," as well as what else does it? Don't forget we're the bad guys. There was comments like that which I liked, and then I liked the fact that they wanted to escape. They talked about riot, or not rioting, but basically committing mutiny and killing the people that have the bombs in their heads and things like that. It really did seem like these guys were evil, and the reason that they fought at the end was more for selfish reasons, like Deadshot wanting his daughter to know that he's a decent guy, but not necessarily to save the world. So I did like the fact that these actually did seem like bad guys, which was really cool. And I'm a huge villains fan, so that was important to me. Then El Diablo's redemption, really did like that a lot. I don't really need him to turn into that monster god thing that he was. I don't think it's necessary, and he never did in the comics. However, it's not something that bothers me. It's just something that I don't think is necessary. So I'm fine with it, but I think the scene would have been fine had he not done that. But I did like his redemption. I liked the fact that he was excited to redeem himself, that he really felt like he had a new family, and that this would make what he did right. And I enjoyed that aspect of El Diablo quite a bit. So I really did like El Diablo's redemption, other than that one quick scene in that fantasy that I talked about. And then my last thing that I loved about this movie was in Harley Quinn's fantasy about her being normal. I'm not quite sure if I enjoy the fact that she wants to be normal. She's always kind of embraced her craziness. So I don't know how I feel about her actually deep down wanting just to be a normal person in a normal family. However, one thing that I absolutely loved about that scene was the way it started, where she presses normal on the dishwasher and then the scene starts. What a fantastic and simple way to show exactly what the scene was going to be like. It was such a perfect moment to just basically scream to your audience what she wants, but doing it in a really realistic and simple way. Just really fantastic. Whoever thought of that deserves a high five. I must say, that is just such a brilliant way to display that. I'm really quite in love with how that scene starts. It's one of my favorite moments of the movie, so I have to say I absolutely love that. Alright, now that's the end of the moments that I thought were particularly fantastic. Now we talk about the ending, and this is another moment that I really did enjoy. Because the end, obviously they all say that they want to go do their own things, and then Amanda Waller comes out and says, no, you're all going back to jail. And then, she, compromises with them a little bit by giving them something. She gives Deadpool, or not Deadpool, Deadshot, an hour or so with his daughter. He gives Harley Quinn an espresso machine, and then when they cut to Deadshot's scene with his kid, I like that. But then when they cut to them in jail again, it just felt like all of that was for nothing. They're just back where they started. It didn't feel like there was anything that was gained by these people redeeming themselves. So I didn't like that a lot. I was actually quite disappointed with how the movie was ending. And then when that wall blew up as Harley Quinn was filling up her cup of coffee, that was just fantastic. That was like, oh, this is the perfect way to end it. Joker comes in, kills everybody, saves her, says, let's go home. Really fantastic, high, upbeat way to end it. So overall, I really did enjoy this movie quite a lot. I do see people's problems with the movie. However, I feel that it was fun. You can enjoy this movie. I don't have to have all my superhero movies have a really complex and intricate story with fantastic character development. Obviously, that's always a positive. However, I can still find enjoyment in this type of movie, and I enjoyed it a lot. I hope that there's a Suicide Squad 2, and can't wait to see it again, I must say. So please tell me what you guys thought of this movie, and thanks so much for watching.